Game Boy Advance is home to some of the most beloved RPGs of all time, and Sword of Mana is a prime example of why the console is so cherished. It's essentially a reimagining of the first game in the series, and sees you being able to choose from one of two heroes, one seeking revenge for the destruction of his village, and the other striving to protect the sacred tree of mana. As with most RPGs, the game is equally split up into a blend of combat, exploring, and customization, with all of the battles taking place in real time, allowing you to wield a variety of weapons such as swords, axes, and bows. Each of them come along with their own unique strengths and weaknesses, making it essential to mix it up and adapt your strategy depending on the enemies you're facing. Now, magic is just as important as melee, as some enemies won't be affected by weapons, and there are several different types based on various elements such as water and fire, scattered throughout the world, and magic spirits, and by coming into contact with them, you'll slowly unlock each type to use in battle. But don't worry about finding them, as each one of them is part of the story, and it's required you find them to advance. Now, you may be thinking that it's too linear, which it is, but you can also level up your magic and weapons, and also forge many different types of equipment in order to make your characters stronger. Overall, Sword of Mana is one of the best entries in the Game Boy Advance library, offering an enchanting blend of story, gameplay, and presentation. Its stunning visuals, emotional narrative, and engaging combat make it a must-play for RPG fans. So whether you're reliving the adventure or experiencing it for the first time, it's a journey that will stay with you long after the credits have rolled. Licensed games usually get a bad rap, and for a good reason, as 9 times out of 10 they feel like cheap cash-ins, but in the case of The Two Towers, it actually ended up being one of the best action RPGs to hit the GBA. As you would expect, it closely follows the events of the film and recounts the epic journey of the Fellowship in their quest to destroy the ring. You get to choose from one of several characters that naturally all have different abilities and playstyles, from a focus on melee to ranged attacks and stealth, which serve to mix up the gameplay in interesting ways. When it comes to the combat itself, it's surprisingly deep, and sees you having the choice of several types of weapons and items that help you deal with the nigh on endless amount of enemies that come your way. From orcs and goblins to trolls and wargs, there's plenty of variety, and that's not even mentioning the boss fights, which are some of the more satisfying and challenging moments to come out of the game. Now, exploring is equally rewarding, with hidden paths, secret treasures, and side quests scattered throughout Middle-earth. As you defeat the enemies that occupy the kingdom, you'll slowly gain XP and level up, and it's here where the customization comes into play. You're free to choose your character's skills and build them in a way that you see fit, and as a result, subsequent playthroughs become all the more enjoyable, as it's easy to experiment and try out a huge range of different builds. Overall, whether you're battling the forces of Saruman at Helm's Deep or sneaking past enemies as Frodo, the game offers up one of the best action RPGs you'll find on the handheld. Sigma Star Saga is one of the most ambitious games on the GBA, and combines elements of RPGs and side-scrolling shoot-em-ups into something it can firmly call its own. The player assumes the role of Ian, a soldier betrayed by his own people and forced to infiltrate the Krill, an alien race waging war against humanity. As a double agent, you've got to walk a fine line between your mission and the complex relationships you'll form with your alien captors, and the story explores themes of loyalty, betrayal, and identity, offering well-written dialogue and a cast of characters that evolve over the course of the game, with it soon becoming one of the best aspects of the experience as a whole. What really steals the show though is its seamless integration of RPG mechanics and shooter segments that blend together in a way that feels natural. It sees you exploring various planets, with each of them offering different terrains, puzzles, and enemies that require careful navigation and skill to overcome. You're able to equip a generous amount of different weapons, such as guns, tracking bombs, and swords, that each have a role to play when it comes to taking on one of the many types of enemies that occupy each planet, and the same can be said for the shooting sections, that see you jumping into a ship and blasting enemies as you dodge waves of incoming projectiles. By collecting gun data scattered throughout each area, it's possible to create unique weapon setups that allow for a wide range of playstyles, from rapid-fire bullet storms to homing missile barrages. Whether you're a fan of RPGs, shooters, or are simply looking for something a bit different, then Sigma Star Saga will be right up your street, and with its wealth of content to make your way through, is something that'll keep you busy for quite a while. Circle of the Moon coincided with the release of the Game Boy Advance and would all center on Nathan, a young vampire hunter tasked with rescuing his mentor from the clutches of a resurrected Dracula. It delivers the trademark Castlevania formula and takes place in a sprawling, interconnected castle filled with secrets, enemies, and challenges to overcome. For fans of Symphony of the Night, you'll feel right at home, with the game embracing the Metroidvania style, blending exploring with RPG mechanics. One of the main differences between this entry and the others though is something known as the dual setup system that sees you utilizing a range of different cards to create a variety of magical effects, from summoning familiars to enhancing your whip with elemental properties. For example, you're able to infuse your whip with fire to deal extra damage to undead foes, or summon magical shields to deflect projectiles. Just like many of the games before it, the RPG mechanics play a major role throughout the game and see you gaining experience points and leveling up, allowing you to grow stronger and expand your abilities. But your equipment is just as important, with a range of weapons, armor, and accessories scattered throughout the castle that open up new ways to deal with enemies and increase your chances of survival. When it comes down to it, Circle of the Moon is a masterpiece that showcases the best of what the Castlevania franchise has to offer. Its challenging gameplay, deep customization options, and captivating atmosphere make it a standout title on the Game Boy Advance and a must-play for fans of action RPGs. Seema the Enemy is perhaps one of the most overlooked action RPGs that the Game Boy Advance ever received, and by sparking the perfect blend of real-time action and strategic gameplay, it creates something entirely unique. The story centers on the struggle between humans and the Seema, a race of interdimensional beings that view humans as their prey. The game puts you into the role of a gate guardian whose job it is to protect people from the Seema, and after a huge accident that sees you and a group of humans trapped within a maze-like dungeon, it's your job to protect everybody and lead them all safely back to the surface. This concept of guiding people is at the center of the gameplay, and it's handled through something known as the Pioneer system that sees you pointing and clicking as the way you would like the group of survivors to head. You're able to organize them into parties of up to 4 and give them basic orders, with each of them having their own attributes that can be useful in solving puzzles, upgrading your weapons and items, and healing your characters as you tackle the many different types of Seema that lurk throughout each space. When it comes to combat, you get control of 2 characters, Ark and Ivy, who each have distinct fighting styles, with Ark specializing in close range combat and Ivy excelling at ranged attacks. The ability to switch between the two on the fly is essential to standing your ground, with the boss battles being a true highlight, offering intense encounters that test both your combat skills and strategic planning. Although it may not have achieved the same level of recognition as other games on the handheld, with its awesome blend of combat and strategy, Seema the Enemy is an action RPG that's definitely worth putting some time into. It's all too common when games make the conversion from console to the portable space that they end up becoming watered down versions of the original. But when it comes to Chain of Memories, the absolute opposite is true, with Sora, Donald and Goofy travelling to the worlds of the first game in order to reclaim Sora's lost memories. Apart from the story being extremely similar due to this setup, the gameplay is anything but. Sure, it's still made up of platforming elements and more importantly the combat, which is where the game differs quite a bit. This time around, the battles are all built around a card system, with all of your attacks from physical to magic to even summons relying on these cards. Each of them is assigned a certain value, which doesn't denote its strength, but actually adds a bit of strategy to the battle system. Whenever you or the enemy perform a move in battle, the card that is used is put in the middle of the screen. If the enemy's card has a higher value than yours, then his attack will go through and vice versa. The inclusion of combos adds even more depth to the system, and by combining certain cards in specific orders, players can unleash devastating attacks or powerful spells, and as you progress, new cards become available. By daring to try something new, Chain of Memories stands as a testament to the versatility of the Kingdom Hearts franchise. It's a game that challenges conventions, rewards curiosity, and delivers an unforgettable journey through the power of memory. Whether you're revisiting it as a fan or discovering it for the first time, the adventure is well worth the ride. Shining Soul 2 takes all of the aspects of the first game and improves upon the many systems that comprised it in meaningful ways. It's basically an action RPG where you can choose from one of many classes for your character to specialize in, such as archery, stealth, or a well-balanced all-rounder, as you set out to free the land from an evil force hell-bent on its destruction. For sure, the plot is nothing other than generic, but for what it lacks in narrative, it more than makes up for in gameplay. The game consists of several dungeons to navigate, each populated with a surprising amount of different enemy types that are either weak or resistant to your attacks. And as with many RPGs, you'll find yourself leveling up over the course of the game and increasing your stats like vitality and strength, as well as acquiring new skills that help keep the hordes of enemies at bay. To complement this progression system is the use of items which are littered throughout the environment and serve to increase your chances of survival. From swords to different sets of armor and even magic, there's plenty to find, and more importantly, many ways to use them to your advantage. For example, you can add elemental magic to your normal attacks, which really comes in handy when you're up against enemies who have a weakness to a specific type, may that be fire, water, or lightning. But getting to grips with the item system can seem daunting at first, due to the sheer quantity you'll find throughout the game, but it soon becomes one of the most addictive qualities of the experience, allowing you to augment your character to suit your specific style of play. When it comes down to it, Shining Soul 2 is a solid title with some minor flaws, but for action RPG fans, you'll find it a great little distraction that's extremely hard to put down once you've gotten into it. Summon Night Swordcraft Story 2 is very similar to the previous entry, and it's almost more of a reimagining than a sequel. Don't get me wrong, there is a new quest, all new characters, new summon beasts, and all new areas to explore, but the core gameplay is very reminiscent of the games that came before it. You'll be exploring dungeons and various areas from a top-down perspective, and once you run into an enemy, the game pulls away to a side-scrolling view where you have free control over your character. During battle, you can switch between 3 weapons that you have equipped and summon something known as a guardian beast to cast spells. The one part of Summon Night 2 that differs from its predecessor though is its crafting system. Atlus chose to simplify it a bit, and instead of having a weapon blueprint that requires a certain amount of 4 different materials, you now only need 1 base material. Once you've crafted the basic weapon, you can then upgrade it accordingly, and the higher your craft level, the more upgrades you can add to any given weapon, ever pursuing the most advantageous weapons. Now, Summon Night 2 has some of the best looking visuals you'll find on the GBA. It goes without saying, the side-scrolling battles look beautiful, but Atlus really touched up the exploring segments of the game as well, and it does a great job of keeping things more interesting when compared to the rather repetitive multi-floor dungeon found in the previous game. It ramped up the visual scale, but it maintained the smooth animation and exciting battles everyone who played the original will know and love, so if you've never got round to playing it, it is well worth giving a shot. The Mega Man Battle Network games took the series in a completely different direction and left behind the usual platforming and instead would offer up some of the best action RPGs on the console. Released in 2003 for the Gameboy Advance, this third entry refined the series' unique mechanics, expanded its narrative depth, and offered an unparalleled handheld adventure. It once again sees you filling the shoes of Lan Akari as you work towards stopping the threat of an evil organization that plan to conquer both the real and digital worlds. Lying at the core of the game is the iconic battle system, which brilliantly combines real-time action with grid-based strategy. All of the encounters take place on a 6x3 grid, with Mega Man occupying one side and the enemies on the other. The heart of the system is within something known as battle chips, which represent a wide array of weapons, items, and various types of support, ranging from powerful single-target attacks to area-clearing abilities, status effects, and healing items. You get to create a custom folder of these chips, and by carefully selecting combinations that suit your playstyle, you're able to fine-tune your deck to tackle the different types of enemies and bosses. Overall, Capcom's attention to detail and commitment to pushing the boundaries of the Battle Network formula have made this entry stand the test of time. Whether you're a series veteran or are looking to try it out for the first time, Battle Network 3 offers a rich and enjoyable adventure that's extremely hard to put down. When it comes to action RPGs, the Tales of series has always been one of my go-tos, and Fantasia on the Game Boy Advance is by far one of the best entries in the franchise. Originally released on the Super Nintendo in '95, this updated version brought the epic story, innovative battle system, and unforgettable characters to the handheld space, and begins in a small village where a group of friends, Cress, Chester, and Mint, are thrust into a battle against the dark sorcerer Deos, whose actions threaten the very fabric of time. On the gameplay front, there's a huge world to explore, absolutely brimming with a cast of lovable NPCs that add a real weight to the events that transpire throughout the story. But the main draw of the game has to be its combat, that utilizes the linear motion battle system and allows you to control Cress in real time. Each encounter is presented in a side-scrolling fashion and sees you having command of a range of different abilities, where you can execute combos, block attacks, and use special skills. It strikes a good balance between strategy and action, requiring quick reflexes and the thoughtful use of your special abilities. Now, your party members are handled by the AI, which does a decent job of keeping up with the player, and you're able to customize their behavior depending on the situation at hand. But where Tales of Fantasia truly excels is with its visuals. They're easily some of the best sprite work on the handheld, and during combat, the flashy effects for skills and spells ensure that each encounter is just as exciting as the last. Whether you've played the original version or are looking for a new adventure to jump into, Tales of Fantasia is a must-have, and it's totally worth tracking down to add to your collection as well. Well, that does it for today's video. Keep an eye out for part 2, as that will be coming up soon, so don't forget to hit subscribe and hit that bell to get notified about new videos that release every Monday and Thursday. You can follow me on all of the socials, which are linked below, to stay up to date, and also join my growing community on Discord to meet many like-minded gamers to continue the conversation with. I'd like to give a special shout out to my Patreon supporters: Rhino, Skilljim, Shuden, Richard, Amy, Daniel, Dio, Omar, Strider, Pierre, Carl, Awesome Jacket Dude, Maximus, Scott, Alfred, Terry, Ryan, Alex, GameCube Galaxy, Curse Salaryman, Fake, and Paddy J for their continued support that helps make these videos possible. If you're interested in joining my Discord or supporting the channel through Patreon, you'll find all of these links down below. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch the video. I'll catch you next time.